Stop spending your emotions like loose change. Most people treat their feelings like an open tab, endless, bottomless, unpaid. They give anger to strangers, validation to people who haven't earned it, and peace of mind to every passing drama that knocks on their door. They burn through emotional energy as if it's infinite, but it's not. Every time you react without awareness, every time you pour your mood into someone else's chaos, you're withdrawing from your inner savings. You're financing other people's storms with your calm. What if emotional energy is your most valuable currency? What if every sigh, every argument, every late-night overthinking session is you handing out your wealth, piece by piece, to people who never asked you to, or worse, to those who don't even notice the cost? True power doesn't come from suppressing emotion. It comes from stewarding it, choosing when, where, and who receives it.
Introducing Seneca, the Roman Stoic who lived in a world of luxury, intrigue, and political violence, yet spoke constantly of peace, control, and inner composure. He understood that emotions, when unmanaged, enslave the mind. His philosophy wasn't about indifference, it was about intelligent investment. Seneca saw anger as the most expensive emotion. He wrote that no plague has cost the human race more. Every outburst burns through reason, clarity, and dignity. In his view, a wise person is one who knows how to pause before spending emotional energy. He compared feelings to fire, useful when contained, destructive when free. The Stoic ideal wasn't emotional emptiness, but emotional discipline, a conscious relationship with one's own inner climate. In his letters, Seneca warned the people who confuse volatility for vitality, those who think feeling intensely equals living deeply. But he countered this illusion with a higher truth. The calm mind isn't dull, it's precise. The restrained soul doesn't lack power, it concentrates it. To Seneca, control wasn't suppression, it was sovereignty. Restraint was not a weakness, but a mark of maturity, a quiet authority that makes emotional chaos irrelevant. And in relationships, this restraint becomes a kind of magnetism. The one who doesn't overreact, who doesn't chase, who doesn't exhaust themselves explaining, they stand out. Modern culture sells emotional expression as liberation, but Seneca reminds us, what you express carelessly, you lose control over. Emotional mastery isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming exact. To practice restraint is to stop being everyone's emotional bank.
Emotional restraint is not repression, it is refinement. It's not about locking away feelings, but about learning where they belong, how much they cost, and who can afford them. Because emotions are not infinite, they're a form of psychic currency. And most people, without realizing it, are emotionally bankrupt. We live in an age that glorifies reaction. Every ping, every notification, every perceived insult demands an instant emotional transaction. But when everything becomes urgent, nothing remains sacred. And when you spend your emotions carelessly on outrage, validation, or fear, you erode the foundation of your own inner peace. Emotional economy begins with the realization: not everyone deserves your reaction. Most of what provokes you doesn't even deserve your attention. And every time you react impulsively, you invest energy in a narrative you don't control. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Seneca warned that anger, anxiety, and envy don't just disturb peace, they spend it. They drain the reserves of reason and clarity that make real action possible. For Seneca, mastery wasn't about indifference, it was about allocation. He believed that emotions must be guided, not surrendered to. Think of it like managing wealth. A reckless spender buys every shiny thing they see, until they're owned by what they bought. Likewise, an emotionally reckless person reacts to every provocation, chases every mood, and ends up owned by their impulses. Restraint, then, is a form of luxury, a mark of inner wealth. It's not about withholding, it's about deciding. You begin to realize that silence, patience, and distance are not weaknesses. They are investments that yield serenity. True restraint doesn't look like suppression. It looks like stillness with awareness. It's when you feel anger rise, but you don't let it drive. When you feel fear whisper, but you don't let it speak for you. When you feel sadness, but you don't let it define your identity. In emotional economy, you begin to make choices. Do I spend energy explaining myself to someone committed to misunderstanding? Do I pour affection into a connection that gives nothing in return? Do I waste peace on proving that I'm right? Each no is a deposit back into your self-worth. Restraint creates clarity. It turns noise into space, confusion into calm. You start noticing that when you stop over-explaining, people listen harder. When you stop chasing, respect grows. When you stop reacting, influence deepens. This is the paradox of emotional economy. The less you give impulsively, the more valuable your presence becomes. Because people can feel when your energy is rare, when it's not desperate to be seen. In a culture that teaches us to express everything, few realize that true expression requires containment. Without restraint, expression is chaos. With restraint, expression becomes art. You start to see the world differently. You no longer equate loudness with strength or emotional volatility with passion. You start to see peace as power, control as clarity. You become intentional with your emotions the way a master painter uses color, sparingly, purposefully, never wasting a stroke. This kind of discipline doesn't dull your emotions, it concentrates them. It makes your love richer, your anger righteous, your empathy precise. Because now, every emotion you release carries weight. Emotional economy is the art of feeling deeply without bleeding carelessly. It's the realization that your attention is sacred, your peace is limited, and your emotions are the fuel of your destiny. Spend them wisely, because everything that drains you also defines you.
You've probably felt it, that quiet exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from overextension. Not physical, but emotional fatigue. The kind that settles in your chest after yet another day of managing everyone else's moods, soothing chaos that isn't yours, and explaining yourself to people who still don't understand. You tell yourself it's empathy, or love, or just being a good person, but deep down, you know it's something else. A kind of compulsion, a need to keep everything together, to earn harmony by spending pieces of yourself. You sat in conversations that drained you, pretending to be calm while your soul screamed. You've scrolled through endless feeds, reacting, feeling, absorbing, as if every headline, every post, every opinion required your heart to weigh in. You've replayed arguments long after they ended, defending yourself in invisible courtrooms inside your mind. And when you finally collapse into silence, it's not peace you feel, it's depletion. You're emotionally overdrawn. You start noticing small things, that your patience has worn thin, that your joy feels muted, that even moments of connection feel heavy, like they come with the bill due at the end. You might even start resenting people, not because they changed, but because you gave too much. Too much care to those who didn't reciprocate, too much attention to problems that weren't yours to solve, too much emotional credit to people who never earned your trust. But here's the truth that stings. No one forced you to spend. They just accepted the currency you kept giving. Somewhere along the way, your emotions stopped being expressions of truth and became transactions of worth. You gave to feel needed. You reacted to feel alive. You cared to prove that you mattered. And it's not that caring is wrong. It's that you were never taught the difference between generosity and leakage, between compassion and self-erasure, between love
and emotional servitude. You thought that being emotionally open meant being endlessly available. But the truth is, availability without discernment leads to depletion without meaning. There's a moment, usually after one heartbreak to many, when you realize something has to change. You can't keep giving yourself away and calling it strength. You can't keep reacting to everything and calling it empathy. You start craving quiet, not isolation, clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from not responding immediately, from holding your emotions close and asking, is this mine to feel? That's when you begin to see that restraint isn't coldness. It's warmth with boundaries. It's love with logic. It's peace with discipline. You begin to realize you don't owe everyone access to your emotions. Your energy is not public property. And for the first time, you feel something deeper than excitement. Deeper than connection, you feel sovereignty.
Here's the paradox most people never see. The more you try to feel everything, the less you actually feel. When emotions are scattered, constantly reacting, constantly explaining, constantly reaching, they lose their potency. They become noise, not signal. And you mistake volume for depth. You start confusing emotional activity with emotional aliveness. Seneca understood this long before the modern storm of constant stimulation. He said that true peace doesn't come from avoiding emotion, but from governing it, from knowing when to speak, when to act, and most importantly, when to let silence speak for you. Because restraint is not repression, it's containment. And containment is not weakness, it's elegance. It's the difference between a flood and a river. One destroys everything in its path. The other flows with purpose, carving valleys into mountains over centuries. When you start practicing emotional economy, you begin to see how much of what once felt urgent isn't. How much of your inner chaos was inherited, not chosen. How much of your empathy was survival, not love. You stop trying to be understood by everyone because you realize that the people worth keeping will understand without the performance. You stop trying to explain your feelings in the moment because you realize clarity often comes after the storm, not during it. You start conserving your emotional currency, not out of fear, but out of reverence, because your peace, your focus, your attention, they are the most valuable currencies you own. And here's the deeper truth. Most people are emotionally poor, not because life robbed them, but because they've never learned to save. They spend every ounce of emotion reacting to people who trigger them. They invest in drama that never yields growth. They pour validation into others, hoping it will return as love, but it rarely does. They confuse exhaustion for depth. And when the account runs empty, they call it heartbreak. But heartbreak isn't just losing someone. It's realizing how much of yourself you gave away for free. To practice emotional economy is to finally understand the sacred tension between feeling deeply and feeling wisely. It's the art of choosing when to open your heart fully and when to let it stay still, observing, breathing, unfazed. It's knowing that the strongest presence in any room is not the loudest one, but the most centered. It's realizing that peace is not found in constant expression, it's found in measured truth. Because when you master the ability to feel without spilling, to love without losing, to care without collapsing, you stop being a participant in chaos and start becoming an anchor within it. This is what Seneca meant when he said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom is not doing whatever you want. It's not reacting whenever you're provoked. It's owning your energy so completely that no one can hijack it. That's why emotional restraint is power. Not because it suppresses passion, but because it channels it.
It's why some people walk into a room and command attention without saying a word. They aren't withholding, they're composed. Their energy isn't scattered, it's concentrated. They've stopped spending their emotions like loose change and started investing them like royalty. And that's the paradox. When you stop giving your emotions away to everyone, you start having enough left to give to what truly matters. Your power doesn't come from being unfeeling, it comes from being unfazed. That's when your presence becomes magnetic, because while everyone else is reacting, you're simply choosing.
Emotional economy isn't built through philosophy alone. It's built through rituals, small, deliberate habits that teach your nervous system how to stay centered when everything else is shaking. The first ritual is observation without ownership. When emotion rises, anger, jealousy, fear, don't rush to name it as yours. Pause. Watch it. Let it move through you like weather passing through a sky. When you learn to witness without reacting, you stop being a hostage to every passing mood. Seneca called this the rehearsal of adversity. He practiced responding to life as if everything was a test of inner command. So, the next time someone ignores your message or shifts their tone, don't interpret, don't spiral, don't narrate a story about what it means. Ask instead, what is this moment training in me? Because most emotional waste comes not from feeling too much, but from misreading what we feel. The second ritual is delayed expression. Don't text in the heat of emotion. Don't post your pain for validation. Don't seek the high of reaction. Instead, write it down privately, a letter you may never send. When you translate emotion into language instead of impulse, you reclaim authorship. That's what emotional maturity feels like. Calm precision, not suppression. The third ritual is energetic budgeting. Every day, decide who and what deserves your emotional attention. Not everyone gets access. Your energy is not community property. It's a sacred investment. Ask, will this exchange multiply my peace or drain it? If it drains you consistently, it's time to unsubscribe, not with anger, but with quiet clarity. The fourth ritual is silence as a boundary. You don't have to explain every emotion. You don't owe every person your process. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you've learned that some moments don't deserve a response. Let your stillness do the talking. It's often louder than words. And finally, practice emotional fasting. Just as the body strengthens when it rests from indulgence, the heart strengthens when it rests from constant emotional stimulation. Spend one day each week without seeking attention, entertainment, or validation. Watch how the world feels when you aren't performing for it. That's where you meet the real you, not the one chasing connection, but the one radiating it. Because peace is not the absence of emotion, it's the proper use of it. It's knowing when to pour your heart into someone and when to protect it like an heirloom. It's building a life where your energy flows toward creation, not reaction. The truth is, people will feel your energy long before they understand your words. And when your emotions are disciplined, your presence becomes magnetic. You no longer need to demand respect. You embody it. That's the power of emotional economy. Your restraint becomes your charisma. Your calm becomes your signal. Your peace becomes your loudest language. Imagine a version of you who no longer leaks emotion. No more over-explaining. No more emotional overdrafts. You move through life with a kind of still power, the kind that draws attention without asking for it. This version of you doesn't beg to be understood. You've stopped trying to make everyone see your side because you've learned that peace isn't found in persuasion,
It's found in containment. Your silence no longer feels empty, it feels sovereign. You've become the kind of person who knows how to keep their energy inside their own frame. You start to notice the difference between reaction and response, between needing to be heard and choosing to be effective. Your communication sharpens. Fewer words, clearer intent. People listen when you speak because your energy no longer spills everywhere. It's directed. The chaos that used to pull you in, the drama, the back and forth, the emotional games, they lose their gravity. You don't orbit them anymore. You stand still and they revolve around you. There's a new elegance in the way you handle conflict. Where you once sought to prove your worth through emotion, now you display it through restraint. That's the paradox. The less you give away emotionally, the more valuable your presence becomes. You begin to recognize that self-control is not coldness, it's intimacy with yourself. You don't need to suppress what you feel, only to channel it. Anger becomes fuel for boundaries. Sadness becomes insight. Love becomes steady, not frantic. This is the shift from emotional consumer to emotional investor. From someone drained by every encounter to someone who leaves others calmer, steadier, more grounded. You no longer chase peace because you are peace. And once you've tasted that equilibrium, you can't go back. You stop measuring your worth by how much attention you receive. You start measuring it by how well you preserve your center. You've become someone unbothered, but not detached. Quiet, but entirely in command. This is emotional wealth, not the absence of feeling, but mastery over its flow. And once you have it, the world feels lighter, because nothing owns you anymore.
If this message resonated with you, it's probably because you've been giving too much. Time, emotion, energy to things that don't return your investment. You've felt the exhaustion of caring without reciprocity, of explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. And somewhere deep down, you know it's time to stop. This is your moment to reclaim emotional ownership, to stop spending your energy recklessly and start investing it with precision. Every pause, every boundary, every quiet no, that's emotional wealth accumulating. The truth is, the people who drain you can only do so with your permission. And once you learn to preserve your emotional capital, they lose their hold. You stop chasing validation because you've already validated yourself through restraint. That's power most people never find, because it requires discipline. But that's why you're here. You're not looking for comfort. You're looking for mastery. And mastery begins with silence, awareness, and self-command. So if you're ready to stop living at emotional bankruptcy, if you're done with the noise, the reactivity, the endless cycles of overgiving, then this space, this channel, is your reminder: control isn't suppression, it's liberation. Share this video with someone who's been giving too much away. And remember, your energy is your currency. Spend it like it's sacred.